Hi, how you doing? Mark here. Thanks very much for tuning in and welcome to another of my time-lapse restoration videos. It's great to have your company. I'll just let you watch through these before shots and then I'll be right back with you to explain what we got in today's video. Here we go then, restoration underway, taping up all done, gloves on, and on with the first stage, which is the dry sanding. More on that in a bit. Well, I've absolutely no doubt you noticed that at the beginning of this video there was some shots of the tail lights of this lovely Porsche Panamera 4S. So a bit of a BRUCEY bonus for you in today's video, and not only are you going to get to see a time lapse of the headlight restoration, but I've also added a time lapse of me bringing those rear lights back to life. So look forward to that straight after the headlights. If that sounds good to you, then please do me a favour and give the video a thumbs up, and don't forget it's free to subscribe. So I'm busy working my way through the dry sanding stage there, getting rid of all the nasties on the surface of that headlight, ready to work it through the rest of the stages. I'll come back to that in just a while. Now, as you know, my company is called Marked Improvement Headlight Restoration, so it's kind of a does what it says on the tin situation with the company name. I restore headlights. Well, that's obvious, but despite the fact that even headlight restoration is a very unknown thing and the service I offer is quite unusual, it goes even further than that, because there are other plastics that I'm also able to restore. You see, over the years I've also been asked to remove scratches and other damage from plastic windows that you'll find on motorhomes and caravans. You'd be forgiven for not knowing that the service I offer is a thing. In fact, the vast majority of people I speak to have absolutely no idea that restoring plastic headlights in the way that I do is a thing, and the same can be said for the windows. Quite often, owners will just replace their old, scratched, damaged, cloudy headlights or windows for very expensive and brand new items, as they had no idea there was an alternative. And exactly the same can be said for taillights on vehicles, as I see an increasing number of these going cloudy as well, as they are affected in exactly the same way as headlights, with weather and sun UV damage eventually breaking them down enough that they lose their colour and just end up really cloudy, and ultimately looking quite ugly. Now that I'm bringing this to your attention, you may be sat there thinking, yeah, actually, I do recall seeing tail lights that looked odd, but maybe didn't quite know what was wrong with them. It's quite common that you'll see the smaller part of the tail light that lives on the boot of something like a 3 Series saloon or a Mercedes saloon going cloudy, whilst the rest of the tail light still looks quite good. And that's actually not unusual, because those plastics on the smaller parts aren't the same grade as the main plastic on the tail light, so they will age much quicker, leading to a tail light that's more pink and cloudy than red and glossy. But in the vast majority of cases, these are restorable, and I've worked on quite a few over the years for BMW, Audi, Mercedes and Porsche, just like this Panamera 4S. And as you'll see later in this video, the restoration of the tail lights on this Panamera did come up really nice, which is very often the case. Sometimes they don't quite get there because they're just too far gone, but these did come up great, so look forward to seeing those later. And just staying with talking about tail lights for a minute, over the years since I started in 2018, I've probably restored more Porsche tail lights than any other. Boxsters, Caymans and the Panamera, they're all classics for going. And I think there's good reason for that. If you look at the tail lights on these, they're actually sat quite flat, so they're looking up all the time and therefore being affected by the sun during the day anyway, all the time. And that will of course have a negative effect and cause them to go cloudy and discolour much quicker than a tail light that's sat more upright. Why not let me know in the comments if you've ever noticed this with tail lights and wondered what was going wrong with them, And in fact, if you've seen any other examples that you've noticed on the road that I haven't mentioned here. I've worked on quite a few others over the years as well. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on it. Okay, so let's just dip back into the restoration. I can see that I'm still on stage 1, the dry sanding. So not long now, and you should be seeing me move on to stage 2, which will be the first of the 2 wet sanding stages. That's where you'll start to see the clarity of the headlight coming back as I'm working towards the clear finish. More on that in just a bit. Now, I want to carry on talking about the tail lights specifically on this Panamera 4S in just a second, as I was speaking to the owner about them whilst I was working on the car. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention headlights on Porsches. And in much the same way as I was talking about the tail lights being very flat and facing upwards all the time and therefore being affected by the sun a lot of the time, the headlights on Porsches have exactly the same issue. And again, I don't know if you've noticed when out on the road, but if you look around and you do see a Porsche drive past you, certainly an older one, there's a very good chance that the headlights on that will be cloudy. And that's really purely down to the design of the car and the fact that those headlights are sat quite flat looking up. And the reason I'm just highlighting this is not only because I'm currently working on a Porsche, but also because a little while back somebody asked me, do I know what car's headlights I've worked on the most over the years? Which is actually a pretty good question, I thought, and at the time I gave them an answer, but since then I've had a look back, and as far as I can surmise, the answer remains the same as that which sprang to mind when they asked me the question, and I think you can probably tell where this is going. But the car whose headlights I've worked on the most over the years is actually a Porsche Boxster. So that rings very true with the theory behind those flat headlights being affected more by the sun than most other headlights. I think you'll agree. Again, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'd love to hear. So let's have a look at the ongoing restoration then, and I can tell you that I am indeed on stage 2, the first of the 2 wet sanding stages, and you can start to see that headlight becoming a bit clearer now. Certainly when I clean it with the isopropanol, it really starts to come through. Now, for those of you who have watched one of my time-lapse videos before, thanks very much for coming back and watching this one. Really do appreciate it. You would know that I'm on stage 2 because of the colour of the microfiber cloth that I'm using, being that it's pink. That means that you'll also know what colour the cloth will be on the next stage. But I won't give it away for those that haven't seen one before. If you're watching this now and you are unaware of the colour of the next cloth, then keep your eyes peeled and see if you can tell when I move on to the next stage. All very exciting stuff, I'm sure you'll agree. Maybe on this occasion I'll ask you to keep your comments to yourself. Now, if I may, I want to share some facts with you about this wicked GT car from Porsche. But before I do that, I just want to finish up talking about the tail lights. As was explained to me by the owner, he hasn't owned this car for very long. So, as is often the case when we take ownership of a new to us car, we like to get all the bits and pieces sorted out, as early as possible to make it really feel like ours. I think he's got some bodywork issues and bits and pieces that he wants to sort out. And luckily for me, he wanted the headlights and the tail lights brought back to new as soon as possible. So I was happy to oblige. Well, in actual fact, I was more than happy to oblige, and I'll tell you why. Because the owner of this car, Graham, actually lives just around the corner from me, and he's a really lovely chap. But that's not the reason I was more than happy to oblige. It's because Graham has supported my business right since pretty much day one. And this is actually the 4th car I've now worked on for him, so it really goes without saying that I'm extremely grateful for Graham's business over the years, and the fact that he has left me 5-star reviews and is always telling others about my company. The very first car I worked on for Graham was actually a little Mercedes SLK that belonged to his wife. That has since been sold, but interestingly enough, a car that he still owns, that is one of the cars that's making way for this Porsche Panamera, I worked on for him about 3 years ago, and he was telling me that the headlights on that still looked as good as when I did them way back then. Well, not only is that great to hear, but I was wondering, can you guess what that car is? Well, probably no surprise, it was actually a Porsche Boxster. Now, Graham loves owning his Boxster, but he needed something with a lot more practicality, and that's exactly what the Panamera gave him, not least because it's got 4 doors. So it was able to replace the Boxster and a Mercedes estate that he owns as well. Another car that I'm lucky to have worked on for Graham, I'm pleased to say. So I just wanted to take this opportunity before I forget, before I move on in the video, to say thanks very much, Graham, for your business over the years. I really hope the Panamera treats you well and you have many miles of happy motoring in the coming years. So the taillights then? Well, Graham was telling me that he's been on forums for the Porsche Panamera, and it seems like quite a common problem, which we've already discussed. And a lot of the owners on the forum were talking about buying new items. And these weren't Porsche new items, they were patent parts. And Graham was saying that even for a pair of these patent parts, you're looking at about £1,000 to replace them. And then of course you've got the old units to get rid of, and the faff of changing them. And I think on Porsche it's quite straightforward, but even so, £1,000 for a pair of new taillights is quite extreme, I think you'll agree. Which is why Graham was so keen to get me around to restore the rear lights and see how they came up. And as you're just about to see, they came up really quite nice, especially when you consider just how bad they were in the first place. So I'm just finishing up the restoration of that headlight. Look out for the video here showing the difference between that restored headlight and the unrestored unit on the other side. I'll let you run through the after videos and then I'll see you in a bit with the rear light restoration. Here we go then, restoration of the taillight now is underway, taping up all done, and that can only mean one thing, so it's me getting stuck into the first stage, the dry sanding. Let's see if we can get this taillight looking as good as it should again. I hope you like the result of the headlight restoration. If you have any questions or thoughts on that or anything else about this video, then please let me know in the comments, as I always love to hear them. Now, I did say earlier that I was going to share some facts with you about this Porsche Panamera 4S, and I'll be doing that in just a bit. But again, if you know anything about these cars, if you own one of these cars or have ever owned one of these cars, then please do let me know in the comments what you make of it, as I really love to hear about other people's experiences of all sorts of cars, especially something like this. Now, if you have watched any of my videos before, you're probably aware of how this works and what my processes are all about, but I'll just explain briefly that on tail lights as big as these, similarly to the headlights on this car, I'm probably looking at about 2 to 3 hours work per unit. As there is quite a lot involved, starting with the dry hand sanding stage, which you can see me working through still now, followed by 2 wet sanding stages by hand, and then the 2 machine polishing using lamb's wool and foam to finish. The aim of the game, of course, is to always get the very best finish I can. Most of the time getting things looking pretty much as new, certainly when you consider how old they are and how worn out they are. And these lifeless taillights were no exception. Incredibly flat, dull, with the colour drawn right out of them. I often refer to it with taillights like this as the slush puppy effect, where all of the good stuff's been taken out and all you're left with is just the white ice behind, and a set of taillights that the eye is really drawn to for all the wrong reasons. Well, stick around, keep watching the video, and I'm sure you'll be delighted with the transformation of these taillights as much as the owner was. Now, I've been fortunate enough to work on some really nice cars over the years, and not least of all, this year alone I've worked on some great cars, a lot of which I've documented with time-lapse restoration videos here on my YouTube channel. Maserati, Gran Turismo, Chrysler SRT6, a supercharged beast, a Jaguar XKR, Porsche Cayman, to name a few. But it has to be said, the Porsche Panamera 4S is something of a dark horse, in my personal opinion anyway. You could argue that when someone says Porsche, you instantly think of something like a 911 Turbo. It's the obvious choice. And when you see a Panamera, being that it's quite a large car with 4 doors, you don't instantly look twice. But it's still unmistakably a Porsche, no doubt about that. and it's still a great looking car, and the more you look at it actually, the more it grows on you, I have to say. So you know it's going to have all the qualities of a Porsche, and probably go just as well as any other Porsche ever made, but it doesn't scream it at you, and actually in some respects I really quite like that. Now, talking to the owner Graham about this recently acquired Panamera 4S that he has, he's very well qualified to give an opinion on how this car drives compared to others, being that he's owned lots of other sports cars in the past and still owns a Porsche Boxster. So it was very interesting to hear him say that he actually thinks the Panamera handles really well, even when compared to the smaller, much more nimble Boxster. To be fair, I found that very impressive to hear. And you've only got to take notice of the very large calipers surrounding the very large brake discs under the very large alloy wheels to know that Porsche clearly have done it again. Except that in the case of the Panamera 4S, they haven't just done it again and produced a great sports car, but they've produced a great sports car that's also a great GT car. Big enough to carry 4 adults in comfort, able to cover great distances without a problem, go stonkingly well in a straight line, but still give the driver an amazing experience when the twisty bits arrive. Wicked. Graham was saying that he enjoys driving the Panamera 4S just as much as his outgoing Boxster, so that has to be a great endorsement for the car as far as I'm concerned. Now, when you consider this car is weighing in at around 2 tons, that makes all of this even more impressive. Now, I must admit, before I worked on this car, I didn't have any idea what they were capable of and about the facts and the figures going on under the skin. I don't know if you are, but I'll let you know in just a sec. There's some quite impressive numbers. So let's just check in on the restoration then and see how that's going. Looks like it's going quite well, to be fair. But then again, I guess I would say that, as I know what the result was and it was me doing the work. So that doesn't count. Quick rinse down of the bodywork there, trying to always keep it as clean as possible throughout every stage. So I can see that I am on the final wet hand sanding stage as given away by the colour of my microfiber cloth. If you know, you know. And what that of course means is you're not too far away from the final result, so look forward to those after videos, and indeed seeing those rear lights gleaming again and doing the back of this Panamera 4S proud. Right then, finally, let's tell you some figures about the Panamera 4S. Well, basically, this is a 2009 model. It's got a 4.8 litre naturally aspirated engine, so no turbos, no superchargers, and it's knocking out 400 brake horsepower through a PDK auto gearbox. I think it might be 7-speed, but I'm not entirely sure. If you know, let me know. And basically, that means this thing is capable of doing 0 to 60 in 5 seconds or thereabouts, and going all the way to 175 miles an hour. Which, for a 2009 car weighing about 2 tons, I think is really impressive. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments, I'd love to hear. Okay then, so it looks like I'm on the compound stage, so it's just the final polishing and the sealing to go, and then you've got a nice set of rear lights back again. Not forgetting to mention, as with all my work, guaranteed for 2 years. So then, we're getting very near to the end now. I'd like to take this opportunity to say thanks very much for watching my video. Really do appreciate it. Give it a thumbs up, that'd be great. And if you're not subscribed, then please do so. Don't forget, it is of course free. Hit the bell icon and you'll be notified about all my future long video releases. I've got some great videos coming up and I'm looking forward to sharing them with you. At the time of making this video, I'm on 998 subscribers, so thanks to everyone who has subscribed to me. I really do appreciate it. So to get to the nice round 1000 would be amazing. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one. And that is what I do. Please like and subscribe. Rest assured, there's plenty more to come.